So, but we're looking forward to those two features. Should really be a lot of fun. Before we start, I wanted to remind you that, like New Eurekan has been closed for over a year now. I know a lot of you really enjoyed coming and joining us for the in-person shows. And, like COVID's hit a lot of us hard. I know it probably hit you hard financially, socially. It also hit the New Eurekan hard, right? So if anything that you can do to support New Eurekan through these times would really be appreciated. There's that saying like every little bit helps, and that's not just a cliche. That's really true. So even if you could just donate $5, like New Eurekan all through COVID has been offering these events free of charge, right, on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on Zoom. So anything you can donate would be appreciated. Just go to www.neweurekan.org and just follow the link there to donate if you can. So we're going to get started, and our process is, or our format is, as some of you know already, is that we're going to start with the features, our two features, and if any questions occur to you while the poets are giving you their poems, just feel free to post your questions into the chat, and they'll be delighted, I'm sure, to answer your questions. And then after the features and the Q&A, we will have an open mic. So if you have a poem yourself that you'd like to share with us, we would be so happy to hear your poem. So we're going to go in alphabetical order, and we'll start with Genevieve Pfeiffer, and she's appeared with us on Word before, right? Because she's such a fantastic, lively poet. We really did want to have her back for a full feature. She's a poet, herbalist, and teacher. They are the assistant director at Anomaly and host its online reading series. And they say, join us, right, while studying at New York University. Their work is forthcoming or has been published in About Place, Frost Meadow Review, Quail Bell Magazine, Birdcoat Quarterly, Juked, so to speak, The Right Room, and others. They oscillate between New York City and the mountains. I've seen a lot of her photographs of hiking in the mountains, and you can find them where there are trees. And I know they won a lot of prizes recently. Genevieve, do you want to tell us a little bit about that at some point? Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little slow. I'm always the last person to log out of Zoom meetings or anything. I just take forever to hit that button. Yeah, so no, I'm really excited. As you all know, it's like you're writing poems, you're writing, or and you're just like, okay, what am I gonna do with this? Do I want to do anything with it? And so, of course, most of my poems I just throw out or I put on the side for myself. But then I'll submit some things to different journals, and I have a manuscript that I've been working on, and yeah, it recently just has caught some attention, which is really exciting. It hasn't been picked up yet, but it was the finalist for a few places and semi-finalist. So it's always a little bit of encouragement that you just need. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just writing and I have so much angst. And then you see other people have angst too, and you're like, oh, good, I'm not the only one. Thank you for sharing this and appreciating what I have to say. So yeah, it's been exciting. Uh, sorry. So what I have today is some poems from that manuscript. The manuscript is called This is a Form of Begging. And the poems, let me know in the chat if you're having problems hearing from me. But the poems, this first one is called The Gates of Dawn. It's about a period in my life when I was going through a really hard breakup, and most of these poems go kind of oscillate between that and like looking at the world and being like, you know what, the world is falling apart. That's not. This is just a very hard time in so many ways. There are just layers of yeah, disconnect with the world, and also like this beauty, but also sadness. So many of these poems deal with that. This first one is written about a hike that I took during this time, and it's called The Gates of Dawn. So I went to a place where sound died, where I could walk for days without stopping, without breathing to anyone's rhythm but my own. Where the sun blossomed and reached for me, the trees, East Coast trees, small and boisterous with their green. How could I forgive myself for loving you? How could I trust myself again? The leaves began to die brightly. The ferns tugged at my passing feet. I walked through the season. I noticed everything. I forgot it all. And this poem is titled, You Can Hear Me Okay, right?
We hear you perfectly. Thank you. Yep.
Good. Okay. So this poem is titled 11 Laws or An Ode to Water. 1. In 20 years, Long Island will be submerged, and the ocean will not remember the beach where he laid her down. She laid him down. They pitched their tent. It will swallow each grain of sand that sugared the bottom of their feet and calves. 2. When the waves lap against the shore, can we say this is a form of begging? She'd said, he's not worthy, but waited for his turn. 3. The water returns, diligently, a lullaby and liquid caress, compelled by a force more powerful than itself. 4. She said yes. He took her to the sea line to make love, to hide themselves away among foam and shells. 5. He took her, or she asked, or they submitted. At the beginning of romance, confusion is a pleasure. Earth and water meet, and the wind smells of both. 6. We know less about the ocean. Its brine covers earth. It travels the sky in heaping clouds. I know more of him now and less than before. 7. Water. An ancient law obeyed, with or without him, a glass next to my bed, a compulsion I turn towards each morning. 8. Could I forgive him? The rain held us cupped against the clouds. We'd sat in the car when he said he'd spend his human years with me. The falling bashed just over our heads. 9. Took me to the edge and left, like a man who comes too quick, leaves his salt. 10. After a year and a half, I haven't forgiven myself. The undertow finds me. 11. The ocean will rise, will take each pleasure-ridden, silted particle. So that's a moment where I was like, climate change, that's okay sometimes.
Woo! I love that. I love those. Each one is like its own little like photograph, right? Its own little vignette, little film, right? And you do wonderful things with like contradictions, oxymorons, like confusion is a pleasure. I knew, more of him and then less of him. I love those little, like they make you, I don't know. They get into your mind and make you think. I love those. Yeah, thank you, Genevieve. Wonderful, wonderful images.
I'm so glad. Okay, let's see. I'm going to just switch over. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and go to this next one, titled August. He went to her on my birthday. Did he sneak through the blades of night between our friends' quarter moon tents to find her? Maybe they walked the Aquinas woods to talk of their hearts, headlamps bobbing between leaves, his light flickering across her face before he guided her backwards through the empty dark, pressed her into the tree trunk's cracked bark. Let's see. Let's do something slightly more happy. Break up the sadness. There we go. Okay. So this is a prayer that I wrote to firefly. Well, I guess it's a little sad as well because the fireflies are actually becoming not extinct, but they're oh, I see some friends. Hi. Um, but yes, the fireflies are not quite extinct, but they're getting there. So this is a prayer that I wrote to them. So prayer to the fireflies. Do you remember their first light? Eerie star fire between metallic blackened trees. Almost yellow, yet another world's powdered green. The tiny lantern alive, like any limb, any reaching arm, any two hands made cups for a stark and elusive beam. Streaking snowflake, steady moon waver, unworldly ash, firefly. I remember the snag of something bright and soft within the trees, concentrated like glowing fog mixed to paint. Where does the star wander, tiny tinkerer in search of a mate? Bioluminescent engineer, your body emits a brilliance unlike anything human, better than our best bulbs, and we've calculated for centuries. How different your frenetic, welcoming energy. How friendly that warm windowed house. Sorry, the warm windowed house. Our slow fatality. A murmured whirl of motors. The way we extinguish you and your angels and barely notice. Measured insect with a voice of light between branches. I'll follow your slow wink into the woods, past the time my house darkens behind trees. You are my Lucifer and Venus, my god of earth, a small fire kindling within.
Nice, thank you. Now, really, are fireflies, I mean, that's such a, again, a beautiful image of the fireflies, their activity, as well as that sort of, as you said, like even humans cannot match this sort of luminescence that they give us, those little twinklings in the forest. But are they really endangered?
Yeah, I had read about it in the news. I just got like a notification and it was like, hey, by the way, you thought beeswax you're in bad shape, but also fireflies. And that made me really sad because, well, for obvious reasons. But I just started thinking about my experience with fireflies. And, as a child, I didn't have many green spaces, but I remember there was somebody's yard with a few bushes. And just like as a kid, taking a peanut butter cup, an empty peanut butter cup, and like how much fun and how much joy that was, like to just search through these tiny, like little small bushes and you just get these globes of light flying around. And I just remember really trying to catch them and like, you put your two hands together and you try to creep up. So yeah, sadly, they are endangered. And I wanted to write something to kind of like call attention to that.
Well,
So
that's I think we all had that experience. That's why your poem sort of resonates with so many of us. Like as a child, I remember on the streets of Queens running with that little jar, like catching the fire. And when you said they're endangered, I was like, oh no, is that because of all the kids running around putting the fireflies? Because of course you put it next to your bed, and in the morning, dead fireflies, right? So I hope it wasn't our doing.
I don't think it was just the kids. I think it was a lot of things. But yeah, and then I started
I
reading. I was
suspect.
like, sorry.
I suspect.
Yeah, many many layers there, many reasons. Yeah, I started reading about them and I was like, oh, they emit what is called like a cold light. So I mean, we're just starting to come out with the LEDs that are a little bit, and that's their body just does that naturally. And it's like it's taking us how long to figure this out? And they're like, yeah, I'm gonna shine my light and it's completely, energy efficient by our standards.
So magical. Well, thank you for that.
Do I have time for one more or should I?
You have time for two more.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will read, let's see. I'll read something lighter. read two more. I will read. Oh, this is a happy. Okay, so when I say happy, right, you have to bear with me. This is a happier one. I, found somebody after breaking up with that ex, and I was like, I like you. The world is ending, but I like you. So things are looking up in my world, at least a little bit. So, and then I started reading again. And I was reading about the permafrost melting, and I was like, well, I have to write a poem about this too. But it was slightly happier. So here we go. This is titled, They Say the Permafrost Will Melt. They say it's been melting now at a rate it should melt in 2090. I want to go to the Arctic with you. I want to see our destruction. What would it be like to stand on a boat surrounded by another universe? To look into the expanse as if looking into the dark of a mouth that will swallow me whole, and know there is no home to return to. We can't imagine it. I want to taste the salt that will overtake me. I want to hold your hand and enter it, like a black hole, like sex. We have no choice. And then, thanks. Oh, and somebody asked, when did you write that one? Where were you?
I think that was about the firefly one.
The fireflies, honestly, I was in my bedroom. But I was just imagining all the places I had seen fireflies and how magical they always have been to me. So yeah, that was just purely by memory, purely like out of love. Yeah, I had been at a wedding also a couple years ago in the South, and I had seen them in the trees in the distance. I just walked away from the wedding. It was so loud, and I just needed a moment to just calm down. And there was this edge of a field where there were trees, and I had never seen fireflies that high in the trees before, but there were just swarms of them all over. And so maybe that's what I was thinking of, but I was in my bedroom. Thank you. So the last one, a little bit more exciting. I bought a leather dress because I was dumped by a man who was dating another woman when he said he'd marry me, and all bets are off. That's the title. Okay. Don't worry, it's thrift store leather, which may mean little of my morals, but I love that a body has been reused. Love that the skin was worn first by the one who made it from their own cells, then worn by another, then another. I want my body to be used the same way, so I wear an animal that can teach me. Its hide tanned deep chestnut and sewn to pull taut over my hips, the V just deep enough for a hint of cleavage, the skin tight to catch each breast's curve. This is how I hold the gift of flesh against my own belly button, where once I was fed by my mother, who made me from her blood, her wide nights of troubled sleep, and didn't she know heartache and grief? This dress from one who once had memories and ripped stubborn blades of grass from the earth, as though they too are not living, are not also reaching for the open air. Let another lover take me this way. Let me find a dizzy lullaby in my own hips. I can smooth myself into this life, as I can into the skin of another, and dance. Let me sing as I walk far from the world I made with him. Let my body say, when you're used and the living goes on, stretch.
Nice. I love that. I love how you include so many ideas and they all sort of flow into one another, yet it's coherent, right? It's different ideas juxtaposed, but all coherent. Like you move from that idea, I think we can all relate to, like no one wants to like kill an animal but I can somehow rationalize it, right? When you buy leather in a thrift shop, right? Because it's like, well, it's already like it was already bought, so I'm just repurposing it. But yeah, you kind of feel that it's sort of, it's kind of okay, right, to do that. But also that idea of like the spirit of, or the I'll say experiences, but you were talking about like there's something imbued in that thrift shop dress or whatever it is, furniture, whatever you're taking, that belong to that person, right? And you're sort of taking it on a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely felt, I always loved leather. I just love it, but I always feel bad for loving it. I'm like, this is horrible. But yeah, I think after that breakup, I was like, you know what? I'm just at that point where I need something and this is what I need. And, yeah, there was something about that dress. I was just like, it was once something alive. And I feel like so much of my life has been just maybe not taken, but when you go through something really, really hard and you're changing, yeah, that dress had changed. I thought about how many times that dress had changed, and I was like, I kind of just need something to show me how to do that and like celebrate it, and not feel guilty about it. And it felt very magical to just be like, this leather dress, this animal is still with me here. We're gonna go out dancing together.
I love that. It's not just, I deserve a leather dress. It's more than that, right? It's I deserve this magic. I deserve to take on this, like this animal skin and go out and have fun. Yeah, nice. Yeah, thank you for that. And I just want to remind everyone in the Zoom room, and I'm going to try to get to the Facebook Live as well. But if you want to post a question, I know some, at least one or two people have posted to everyone the question. If you feel more comfortable and you want to post your question to me privately, you can certainly do that. And so we'll get to Genevieve's questions after our next feature. Thank you, Genevieve. That was so wonderful. All that poetry, all those images, is just fantastic. Thanks. As someone in the chat said, you have such a vivid memory, right, of the details. Okay, so we're going to go to our next feature, Bob Timm. As I said, we share the same last name, and that's not a coincidence. Bob is my brother, and as I said to Genevieve before this event, he's the one who actually got me into poetry in the first place. I was a music major, and my brother said, oh, why don't you major, do your graduate work in English? All you have to do is read. And actually, it's a lot more work than just reading. Thank you, Bob. It was a lot of work, but it did put me on a good track. I have a job that I love, right? Teaching English, teaching poetry. And I also remember that one night, Bob and I were living in this student house, this big student house, and Bob said to me, come down to the poetry club, it's so much fun at the Nuyorican. They push the tables against the wall, and after the poetry event, and everyone's dancing. And I thought, like, oh, poetry, okay, I kind of like poetry, but I really like to dance. And that's how I got into the slam poetry. But Bob Timm is a poet, drummer, piano player, and family man from Nyack, New York. He's a native New Yorker, right? He's from Queens, like I am. He earned his master's degree in English from City University of New York, studying with Allen Ginsberg, among others. Bob was a founding host of the New York City College Slam at the Bowery Poetry Club and was a 2015 nominee for the Pushcart Prize in Independent Poetry. Please welcome Bob Timm.
Thank you, Christine. And thanks, Genevieve, for leading us off there. I think that last poem, you could just like put that as your profile on Match.com and get some really interesting. You either get banned or you get some great matches. So as context for the poems I'm going to read tonight, I'm not like a consistent poet in any means. I convinced my sister to go into English and stay there, and I didn't. So I went some different directions. So my prep for this was like, oh, I got to go into Google Drive again, figure out which ones are on Google Drive, figure out which ones I've typed up, and just pick some poems. And I kind of almost accidentally did a William Burroughs cut up thing where I'm upstairs hitting prints for all these poems. The printer's in the basement. I go, great, they all printed, says printed, great, 37 pages, whatever. Go down to the basement, realize that the printer is set up on a desk, and it basically just spat out all my unnumbered pages all over the floor. So I had to pick up like 37 pages of 5 or 6 poems and then figure out like which ones go together. So, but when I, assemble this, what I realized in putting these together is that all of my sort of inadvertent theme, there's a lot of poems, they're all about like journeys or transportation in some way, which is on my mind a lot because I'm about to leave Nyack and move my entire family to the UK. So there's a lot of thoughts going on. So let me start with, first one is a poem that I actually read at the last open mic. It's about traveling in the subway in New York City, which I did for many years for various reasons, both, life and work and everything else. But there's about one particular trip coming in from Long Island and delivering something to a friend. This is called Prickly Passenger. Today I am hands down the most annoying commuter on the E-Train Express. The cell phone is silent. I unfold no newspapers. I spill no coffee. I do not smoke, and I left the house freshly clean. However, I am in fact bearing a gangly pair of thorny berry bush saplings, their sticky stems gripping, extending in halos of prickly preserve, and granting me extra inches of elbow room among the crunch of otherwise obligated too close commuters rattling together. Eyes anywhere but here. One might expect even, a whimsical appreciation for this stickly variation in the subway routine, one affirmation of a nature at home, a small presence in hand to signify the world above, this tunnel of dark tracks and cars screaming on hellbound. Am I not a messiah to them, a prophet of the green economy above, escorting these saplings on their exodus to the promised gardens on the upside of the concrete island, awaiting adoption by an expectant Madonna of Jersey? But there is no religion underground beyond due patience and a little faith in the perpetual opening of exit doors and the working of eventual escalators.
Whew, I remember that one. I love that poem.
The next one is digging back a long time. And again, as a travel is on my mind, I'm about to put my entire family with pets on a plane, then in a bus, and like travel through a whole bunch of stuff. So there's kind of a mini road trip or a major road trip. This is about road trips that I took for a number of years with my dad. As an adult, we decided to go to Disney World as adults, which is what we did. I don't know. It's funner without kids. I don't know. Anyway, this is a first part of a poem series called Cruising with Dad and Other Patriarchs. This is the first section, Charlie and the Sun Pilgrims. In the driveway, my father's Lincoln trunk opens gate mouth to swallow my backpack and other family luggage stacked, familiar frayed old suitcases, sister's stuffed purple duffel bags, and dad's standard video camera, gathering in for 24 hours of darkness beneath the gripping weight of the bike rack straddled behind. We will look back on a monotonous stretch of I-95 and watch the spoked wheels practice their spinning rhythm. And headaches will spin away to beeps and buzzes of the microchip dashboard, a backbeat all the way, telling us how long and far to the magic southern morning and the ultraviolet rays we cherish as we rustle through snack foods and maps and books of recreational tips and color-coded promises preached in easy-to-read 5-day battle plans for Disney, Epcot, MGM, Orlando, USA, bursting with freeways, tramways, express buses, shuttling the packs of families and Americans, park to park and line to line, to Serpentine, the Promised Land, Adventureland, Libertyland, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland. Tomorrow we'll be dreaming in sanitary Technicolor and crisp Dolby sound waves. I can feel the prophecy screaming through the windshield in the night as I grip the wheel from my shift and read the billboard highway literature warnings of all the joy we miss as we speed through Virginia, Carolina, looking for the sunrise and a not so lonely road stop where we can eat food and get gas. It's all the same anywhere you go in America, thank God. My thoughtful night shift ends as the highway glows in a slow daze and my dad rubs his eyes like a baby and studies the skies and the road signs, his thoughts shifting slowly to the consciousness of a freeway dawn as the crashing waves of passing freight trucks rattle the morning into our cramped bodies. Off the road, I slumber through a breakfast of surreal eggs and useless coffee. My head floats silently away above the constant ringing of forks and plates as my hands and mouth continue their survival instinct of cut and chew. And soon I slip into the cool leather bucket seat riding shotgun, now with the passenger freedom to dream away the gradual curves and the white lines of the highway. I trust my father behind the wheel because he's always driven, it seems, knowing the roads without a map and guiding us always to greater adventures with a trust my father behind the wheel because he's always driven, it seems, knowing the roads without a map, guiding us always to greater adventures with a well-trained instinct for family pleasures. I trust and I sleep through the crusted Savannah stench, through Republican Southern troopers, through the shotgun-guarded Edens, through the monotonous branches of American roads and Floridian exits. I trust I will awake in the orange afternoon to the magical gateways in the sun, shining on the erected promises of the dying wealthy dreamers, and my father handing out the passes to this plastic oasis. I trust I will awake to my family, my America, to crafted fantasias of democratic joy, to kingly creators feeding us with cake, to fat-packed parents buying cartoon tickets, to obese children chasing 6-foot singing squirrels, to Cinderella rockets shooting up the night. I will raise my head and fall to my knees and whisper silent praises for colors in the sky, the great myth of chariots blazing up above, forget about the highways and the boredom and the lies, as the animated gods of Mickey, Mice, and Men dazzle sunlight in my glasses and starlight in my eyes.
Woo! I love that. The religion of Disney.
Yeah.
I like the surrealness. Like, you use the word surreal, I think, to describe the breakfast. I think we all had that experience of being on a road trip or a plane trip, and like somehow you arrive at a destination and you're like, oh, like you haven't slept, and everything does seem so surreal, right? Not just the journey, but suddenly, you wake up and you're in a different land almost. And sometimes you wake up and people are speaking a different language, even if the language is English, right? You wake up in Florida, it's not New York English, right? It's like Florida English, a different culture. It's surreal. I love that. Thanks for that trip.
All right. The next one is a shorter poem. This is about my brief but surreal time taking a class with Allen Ginsberg at the CUNY Graduate School, and about just being in a class and like having a few hangout events with him. One of which was like going to a Buddhist memorial service for a friend of William Burroughs that was in the city. So this is a poem that's actually an acrostic poem. I hope I have the right word, but basically the title, if you can see it, you can't see it. That's not gonna work. There's a screenshot behind me. Anyway, the title, Allen Ginsberg Saved My Life, is the first letter of each line in the poem. So each word is a stanza, and each line starts with each word. So it reads Allen Ginsberg Saved My Life down the left. Anyway, here's the actual poem. A modern executive 40th floor office lit by neon fruit humming tubes, lion Buddha in gray suit and tie. Even I could not detect the vision, never a sign of his howling past. Going along 42nd Street, I think of distant highways and not of the immediate streets. But suddenly, he pulls me out of the path of a bus barreling towards my thoughtful self, ever ready for poetic graces, but not ready for the moment when Allen Ginsberg saved my life. Sometime later, we stand in line at a Tad Steaks, ordering meat for ritual, very raw, like he said we needed. Even I could feel the snickers and stares directed at the crazy old man he is. My knees crack and ache in lotus form, yet he forgets his age and folds his legs. Like an obedient, faithful dog, I sip my wonton soup and wait for the words of an ancient East Village superstar and lowly prophet. All right, I will move right along from that to another 60s celebrity poem. That one was facts, this was fiction. I didn't actually go to this birthday party, but it sort of sounds like fun. This is Bob Dylan's Birthday Hug. The ordinary streets are unfamiliar to me as I coast slowly in the rain, Shiny drops of nighttime splatter on the windshield sliced by the wipers, ticking in time to the clicks in my head, and shimmering signals from the streetlights as they bounce flat and wide off of the windows and the puddles ahead. We don't speak, just listen, and the only song we have is riding in the back, ignoring us, in equal measure to our own indifference, our mutual agreement to refrain from the refrain. Until we park the car, we don't speak, until it is time to shuffle up and move, assemble the utilities for our engagement, the paper invitation, the modest bottle of Merlot, the card you wrote along the way in fancy script, the phones we unplug and place in our pockets, and last the umbrella, the $5 one. I will find the snap and let it furl and unfurl and wait to see what shape it wants to make tonight, what form it takes to protect when the engine winds down and we jerk our shoes out sideways over the puddles to the curb, ready to dash to the destination with our excited chatter about what the weather is and isn't, and who is waiting ahead for us tonight, all dried up and warm inside the party house. Bob Dylan's birthday is in a basement tonight, festive, dark, and full of people, not so interested in meaning as in the means to eat and greet and drink together. All of us here circling the tables in slow-mo, a soft tango around the salted taco chips and sweet salsa inside the elemental serving bowls. My eyes catching yours and someone else's, and one more guest and another, and then your eyes again. Each of us scanning for feedback and response, someone to tell us more about the taste of the cheese and the choice of crackers before we load up our plates and commit. The whole time, Bob over there in the corner, dim lit by one rickety lampshady lamp, strumming his strums the way he strums and humming his words just past the microphone, staring at the floor or perhaps someplace in the corner where there may have been a cat staring back. No one around old Bob besides a ghost, one shadowy shape of a man bellowing his own birthday songs in a basement and watching the wind-up of tipsy strangers and not so successfully ignoring the echo of one tiny woman next to him clattering about the barbecues in Memphis and what they meant to a young so-and-so dreaming dreams of this and that. One woman talking past the energetic ballads like a single flashing stoplight on an old country road. Before we leave, I stop you silently and beg for one moment to linger with lonely Bob. I only need to speak a few words and let him know we wish him well, or happy days, or thank you much, some potshot tidbit of random casual relationship that might come off as good luck or might mean death, the way you never know what may be foretold when birds chatter sweetly in the dark night through the wind. But the only words I have for Bob as I slide up are to say, I want to hug him for a while undetermined. And he slowly lowers his guitar and leans in hard, falling against my shoulder with all his weight, my arms reaching around to hold tightly to his heft. This massive, overheated torso of an overdressed man. He falls forward like a fur-bound father bear, shrouded inside an old man's musty overcoat, smelling of age and whiskey and the unfamiliar. And there you come to step up from the other side of him, to hold Bob across his arched and weary back. The two of us now sheltering the shoulders of greatness all together like we care for a planet. The way we love our children and their dreams, holding close to all the humanity and the pain between us, and waiting for the man to hit the refrain, to sing a single word, to bellow out and ask us one last time to say goodbye and thank you and good luck in the rain.
Woo! That is like a whole freaking like independent film that must be made. I love that. I know,
Yeah.
in your spare time, you can make that film. But I mean, I know you have this like amazing sense of humor, but somehow it's sort of, not somehow, but it really, it creeps into your poetry. Like I love those, like it's not just a black umbrella, it's a $5 umbrella. For some reason, that's really, like it's so hysterical. And just this idea of like, Dylan in the basement singing to himself on his birthday. It's like, it's really funny. Thanks for that. And I just want to add something. We have, Bob and I, we have a few brothers and a sister as well. And I apologize to my sister in advance for sharing this, but my sister posted that our mother is listening, Bob's mom is listening, and my sister keeps snapping her fingers, and her mother says, like, why are you making that noise?
So how much, I got a semi-short one and another similar length one. What do you think? Like 2 more? 1 more? What do you think?
2 more is good. You're good.
All right. let me do the longer one first, and I'll end with the shorter one. So the longer one is another throwback poem about traffic again. It has to do with the lovely relationship I am currently in with my partner in crime and life, Donna, we're taking this trip back to her hometown. This is about where this started. So this is Love Kite Flies in Traffic. So we were international, we were at pen pals, it was kind of a lot to figure out early on. So this is about trying to figure this out early on. This is Love Kite Flies in Traffic. I know it's difficult to fly a kite in traffic, but that's where you've put me. Somewhere above, this kite is soaring and flapping, beautiful in the clouds. Once we knew all its tails and colors and held it in our hands, so content to grasp each end and unfurl our creation as we smiled and cried as we let go and sent the kite up so low to the ground it caught the huge gales of history and flapped valiantly left and right in front of us. We could see it clearly, but we each had a string. We had to move apart as we got further away. The kite flew higher, all of us expanding like an expanding isosceles triangle, with that flying tip going up until it became smaller and independent until we could barely see it. But we knew it was still there. At least I knew because I could feel it pulling on my side of the string as I held it close, and it pulled every way. And I thought of it up there in the clouds, looking beautiful, the biggest thing around, flipping in and out like a Chinese dragon, catching the gulfs and valleys of air above the smog and distance of the earth, where I stood strong in my place as I tried to hold on in the traffic. And all at once I was dodging trucks and buses each way, screeching past. And I swear I knew some of the drivers who drove straight against me as I tried to stay on the median on one of those curvy metal dividers, which can be quite difficult, and holding onto the string as it jerked and shifted and seemed to unravel. But I swore I would hold on. I could easily have let go and walked quietly home, but I held onto the string, which threatened every minute to drag me into the path of one of those 18-wheel cross-country cargo trucks carrying baked goods for the masses who drifted on in their shopping malls and their sports cars, zipping like flies on either side as I struggled in the center. But I still found a way to keep my eyes up and imagine this kite, large and triumphant in its place, flipping valiantly while I dashed and danced below like I knew it was happening. But the string was much thinner now, and I wondered how your end was doing. And we started moving closer once more, and I expected the triangle to shrink and the kite to get closer and more visible, but it seemed to stay in the clouds, refusing the earth. Though I tried to put it down, thinking you would do the same, and we could meet once again, and that kite would fall into our hands, and we'd each fold an end and wave it like a flag as we smiled and cried together again. But you got close, and I could see the kite was still up above at the end of it, and I cried and you smiled. You took my hand, and gently we both grasped my end of the string and slowly reel in the kite, and the traffic seems to slow as we watch the sky for the kite gently flapping in clouds. And I hold you close, not knowing how to cut my end of the string. So now we're flying a kite.
Yeah, your poems are so filmic. I mean,
Right.
so like great.
So I noticed that a lot of poems are picked out somehow. There's like 3 of them that somehow inadvertently also have me like almost accidentally getting killed in traffic of some kind. So I don't know psychologically what that's about, but but they're about travel or departures. This last poem is sort of almost also about a departure. So a friend of mine that we lost early on in my life, suddenly, my friend Chris, and I used to like meditate and like communicate with him for a while as my healing method. And I got a lot of insight from things that he told me after he left. So this is called Steam. Back on the path, I call again and hear nothing and stare at my toes, kicking up twigs and pebbles in the dirt. Look at the leaf, you say, and I find one sturdy and brown, crisply pointing to your shadow in the woods. Unfold the leaf and read the triangle. And I'm hooked on your riddle like a metal hanger. Triangles are on my mind. As mysterious as you, what about triangles? I break right, leave the path, and dart like an angel for the swinging wood and the trees. You stop for a second, sit across from me and say, steam. Learn the secrets of steam. I picture steam like blood rising from your soul, rising like your soul from a body, steam gone like blood, boiled out of a pot, up away and gone. You put my mind in the bog where near black steam, sweat, and smoke of the swamp clears my vision. Paint the lakes and the triangles, you want me to say. Life floats like a lake on the base of a triangle, rises like steam on one side, and falls like rain down the other. You grin and tap your fingers on the wood. I'm steam, you say. I'm nothing but steam. And that's that.
Thanks, Bob. That was really great. Love those poems, of course, as you know. Bob and Genevieve, I mean, there's sort of like a common spirit in your poetry. Both of your all those poems were like so lively and so much energy behind them. It's not, some poems, sort of sit very nicely, but you guys kind of like move from image to image, from action to action. There's so much going on there. Personally, I love that. Okay, so we do have a few questions. While I'm going through these questions, those of you who are in the Zoom, if you, want to do the open mic, could you please, just let me know in the chat that you're up for the open mic, and if we'll get to that. And if you're on Facebook Live or on YouTube and you want to share a poem with us, then I saw there were several people saying like, how can I get in on this? You want to join us on Zoom. So go to the nuyorican.org website and you'll see that there's a link there in the calendar for the Zoom event. And if you join us, we'll be so happy to hear your poem. Okay, so Genevieve, why don't we start with you? We have a question. Rhonda asks, how do the exes feel about you writing about the breakups?
I have no idea. I haven't talked with that ex, basically, and I don't think that. I mean, he knew. He said, "Oh, I hope you get a good poem out of this," and I was like, "I think I'm gonna get more than a poem out of this." Yeah, I have no idea, and after what happened, I was like, it's not really a big concern of mine, I do it for myself, and yeah, I haven't kept in touch. I've actually actively tried not to keep in touch. He reached out to me a few times and I was like, as my poem mentions, he told me he'd marry me right after he broke up with me and had started dating somebody else. And I'm like, I don't need to keep in touch with you. We'll see when my manuscript if it's ever published, that might change. But it is New York City area, and I've kind of tried to disappear from that. A few of those connections, which is sad, but at the same time, sometimes necessary. So.
It's such an interesting question, because when you write about your life, as we often do as poets, you're going to include the experiences of others, comments of others, behaviors of others, and you don't ask permission, do you? Right? It's sort of, just is, or maybe more to the point, part of being, a friend or family of the writer, or, partner of the writer, right? You're going to end up in a poem eventually. So those of you who are not poets, be forewarned. Okay, Bob, we'll jump to a question. Someone asked, Bob, why did you stop being a writer?
I didn't stop. I'm writing stuff all the time. I don't know. I have a part of our sort of house compression and repacking. I finally got the opportunity to find all the little bits of paper and things that I stuck along the way, all on the bookshelf, finding the little things of the lost poems. So I have 3 or 4 different notebooks. So I haven't stopped writing. I just wasn't very consistent about focusing on binding them together all the time and then keeping those habits. But I think a lot of us as we evolve into starting writing before most of the modern technology and moving into it, you went from notebooks to I remember having a discussion with Bob Holman once made a comment that like, oh, it's impossible to write on a phone. You can't write a poem on a cell phone. It's impossible. So, I was commuting into work at the time and all the time. So like, all right, God damn it, Bob, I'm going to write some poems on my cell phone. Hopefully I have some of those saved, but some of them I may have lost. So they kind of disappear into the technology. So hopefully I'll save most of them.
Now at open mics, like 50% of the people read their poems from the cell phone, right?
Right.
Even have cell phones, we would be missing a lot of great poetry. There is a question for both of you. Oh, someone asked both of you guys, when did you write your first poem and why? Interesting question. So either one, jump in.
Well, I think if it counts, and I'm going to say it does. I think I started writing verse when I was like in the kindergarten taking piano lessons, and like an idiot I thought, oh, I just learned 2 things in the piano. I'm going to write a song, and like sort of like writing out notes, and I had like words that needed to go with the notes. So, and you just pull from Dr. Seuss and all that stuff, and figure out how to put words together. And of course, I had my sister Christine.
Really? Was I any help at all? Genevieve, what about you?
Yeah, so it's going back some years. It's really confusing. Actually, I wrote my first story before I wrote my first poem. I always thought I was going to be a fiction writer. I always had these elaborate stories in my head. So I actually wrote my first short story when I was 7, and I had some learning disabilities, so I actually couldn't read at that point in time, but I was writing all the time, and few people could read what I wrote. But so I wrote my first short story at like 6 or 7, and then my first poem I think I wrote when I was a freshman in high school, and my teacher just asked us to write a poem. And I remember it just feeling really good. But it was also very emotional and angsty, and so I was a little, and then after we had to write it, she was like, oh, you're gonna like put it on this big poster board and we're gonna tape it in the hallway. And I was like, oh my gosh, you want me to tape this up and put it in the hallway? So I think after that point I liked it, but I was a little nervous. I wasn't like the coolest kid in my freshman high school class, and having it up on the wall, I was a little like, oh my gosh, people are going to see this. But I loved doing it. And then later on, we started reading poems that I really loved. I think I really got into poetry probably 17 when we started reading some more, like not Shakespeare, but maybe, I can't even remember what we were reading, but probably something around like 50s, 60s. It might have been, oh gosh, it might have been Allen Ginsberg, honestly, which Bob would know better than myself. But so that was, and yeah, that was when I kind of got hooked. But I still, at that point, still thought I'd be writing fiction. It took many years for me to kind of accept that I was going to write poetry. I was very much into fiction for a while, but
that's so interesting about your experience with the poem as a child, though, because the poems more than fiction writing, I think, and that's debatable, I think are more personal. So I'm sure you weren't expecting to advertise, right, whatever emotions and ideas you have in the poem, or to have it, posted in the hallway, right? So I could see how you'd have mixed feelings about that. You mentioned Allen Ginsberg. Just a fun fact for everyone about Allen Ginsberg, his great, sort of watershed poem Howl. He wrote that thinking that he would never show it to anyone. And he always said that's why he thinks it's so good, is because he wrote it with the idea that it's going to be so personal, he would never share it. So it's sort of interesting how that happens. Okay, Juliana has a question for both of you. Does poetry help with your own mental health? Could it be a coping mechanism for you? Good question. Either one of you jump in.
You want to start, Genevieve?
I can start. Yeah, I would say absolutely. So I don't know. I feel like I think through writing. I know that like some people really want to just talk something through, and that's just never been my approach. It doesn't help me. In order to understand how I'm feeling, very often I just have to write about it, whether that's journaling or writing a poem or, something else. It just, sorry if you can hear the outside noise. But yeah, it just helps me process my emotions, process what's going on in my life, and kind of put it in a way that I can accept and understand, I guess. And yeah, I think definitely writing these poems helped me just push past this time in my life, and move on to like a lot more nicer times. But I needed to get that out. I actually thought, when that breakup happened, I thought I'm never going to write again. I'm tired. I don't want to think about this. I don't want to go through it. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I had to just get it out. So.
Yeah, I think for me, like poetry as like a form of therapy or like, mental health, it's hard to think about that in the moment of writing. But definitely like reading things that I have written years later, like I did tonight, like even just reading them tonight, like thinking about, these snapshots that I took of a particular time in my life or a particular place, and you sort of understand things more when you're able to kind of capture them in that moment. So that's like writing is valuable that way, even if you're lucky, it can be therapeutic in the moment. But more likely, I think that the more common case is it becomes therapeutic when you sort of are able to capture that and then able to reflect on it by reading it later or out loud or to yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. The amazing poet John Blake, his stage name for stage poetry is Survivor. He has this poem, very evocative poem, about his brother, Benny, who died of AIDS. And I asked him once, like, oh, is that catharsis for you? Is it cathartic to perform that poem? And he said, no. Every time I perform that poem, I relive that horrible experience. So it's it also actually reminds me of Allen Ginsberg, who one time in class said to us, sometimes I write poetry and I just sob. And I remember as just like a young woman, young student, thinking like, you should stop doing that. Like why? But Ginsberg was a poet, right? And that was like the easy and simple answer. All right, so we just have time for maybe a few more questions because we do have several for the open mic. Miriam's asking, do you find, for both of you again, do you find writing easy?
No.
Yeah, I agree. No. No.
I think that's sort of a misconception. We hear it doesn't sound like you had to sharpen your pencil, right? It sounds so free flowing and it sounds easy. I mean that as a compliment. It just sounds so like the images are so vibrant and real, So it's yeah. I mean, just here's my question. I mean, I bet like, what's the process for you, like the writing process? When you say it's not easy, I'm guessing it just doesn't fall out of your head right onto the keyboard, right? So what happens?
Well, so I was just going to say, like there's the whole like Jack Kerouac, first thought, best thought. Writing it. What you just pull out the typewriter, just start writing whatever's coming out, and you just see what happens. But I have a very good friend and an excellent writer, Bill Batson, who was talking about writing in the conversation recently. And he said that there's no such thing as bad writing, like his got that everyone can write, approach. and that there's no such thing as people who can't write. There's just people who can't write 10 times. So it's like most people give up on things. So if writing is hard, it's always hard. And 99% of what you write is going to be kind of the first time you write it. So good luck. If you can be Jack Kerouac and write on the road, great. But most writers have to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. So if you write something 10 times, if you keep writing it, eventually you are going to get it to a place that at least means something to you. Maybe up to 100 times and mean something to somebody else, but it's persistence.
Okay, Genevieve, I just want to, I'm sorry, I have to share another fun Allen Ginsberg fun fact. Again, I remember a student giving Ginsberg his little manuscript of poetry and, saying in the next class, Alan, you haven't mentioned my poetry. What did you think of my poetry? And he sort of slid it across the desk. And he's like, why did you give me this unedited crap? Right? And the student said, but wait a minute. Kerouac said, as Bob said, first thought's best thought. And I remember him pointing at the student across the table with his finger and saying, Kerouac was a genius. You, sir, are no genius. And Genevieve, what about you? What's the process for you?
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely lots of edits. Sometimes it just kind of flows. You just get in that moment where something has to come out and you write it as it should be, but that is so rare. And I would say it's been a struggle. Just the whole writing thing has been a struggle of trying to figure out, what I'm trying to say or what I want to say or what needs to be said. And then, do I want to say it? How do I want to say it? And so, it's taken me so many years. And sometimes I just sit down, I'm like, I'm not going to write anything that I really need to write today. I'm just going to look on the internet, find some prompts, or really focus on, Christine said, some images. I might just focus on trying to describe something, not trying to write about how I feel, just trying to write about this other thing completely. And then, because sometimes you get into a funk. You're like, I can't write anything, or everything I'm writing just isn't working. And so I have to definitely, give myself, keep myself going through different prompts, or give myself little projects to work on until something comes up and it just sticks. I will say, I try to write regularly, and I have my little ritual. I love my green tea with a little bit of jasmine in it. That's my magic that I need to get writing. If I have my green tea with jasmine, I'm just okay, I can do this. And so, yeah, I like to have that. That's really, that tea is it's writing time, signals that. Other than that, it's just, it takes a lot of patience, honestly. I'm not the most patient person, so that's tough. But just continuing to show up, like you both have said, as often as you can, and just saying, no, I'm gonna make this a priority. That's really, that I agree with you. That is probably the biggest thing for me that's kept me going.
And listening to you guys and poets like you, that's so inspiring. I know sometimes I give my students extra credit, to go to the poetry events, and afterwards a lot of them say I was really inspired, and here's my poem that I wrote, after listening to those poets. Okay, so we have a quick question for you, Bob, and then a question for both of you. Bob, what is that crazy cool background?
I think you might have seen it on a meme. I think the name of the meme is "This is fine," and I saw it once. It was essentially when I saw it the first time, it was an illustration of Lee Scratch Perry, the reggae producer, and he's just sitting there with a cup of coffee in the middle of this fire, and the caption is fine. And I feel like that a lot. This is I think like stuff going around, things are burning up, but give me my cup of coffee and a seat, and I'm like, all right, I can deal with that.
I like that. This is sort of like what Genevieve was saying with the tea. Like, the house is on fire. I'm writing my poem and drinking the tea. I love that. So, a question for both of you. Last question. Where can we read your poems?
Well, I will say probably not too many places. I've got a lot of scattered poems published in a lot of various journals all over the place. And even though I work in technology and I've worked in the internet for, a long time, I'm very bad at creating websites for myself. So I don't have the bobtimpoet.com I can send you to, but someday I'll get that together.
So I have a few on the internet. And like I said, some point I'm hoping this manuscript will be accepted. So hopefully within like the next year, you'll have a book from me. Until then, I just got an acceptance from West Trestle Review. So there should be something out in the next couple months there. I've also been published on Juked. That's like Juked. And let's see, I'm trying to think that is not print, right? And that's something that's digital. So Birdcoat Quarterly, and why am I blanking on so many of these? Oh, Quail Bell Review, I think. And then Frost Meadow Review has a COVID poem that I published a couple months ago. So if you want COVID poems, which maybe you do because you're like, I feel this, and maybe you're like, no, that's enough. Depending on how you're feeling. If you need that, it is at Frost Meadow Review. I'm trying to think. I'm completely blanking, but I can put a couple in the chat. I know like Gates of Dawn was published about a year ago, but I can't remember off the top of my head where that is. And About Place, which is a great journal. I love it. It centers on environmental themes. So they've published a few of my poems, About Place. But yeah, I think right now that's all I can really remember. My brain is like filled with other things.
Well, thanks for that. Hopefully, you guys will be inspired to create your website so we can go there and just like click on these links to your wonderful poems. That'd be fantastic. But thanks to both of you. We're going to now continue with it. We have two only for the open mic. So if anyone else is in the Zoom room and wants to hit the open mic, that's great. Each one of you gets like 3 or 4 minutes. So if you've got 3 or 4 minutes of poetry, we would love to hear it. And we're going to start with Tyler Vile with M Fish on deck. So Tyler, please, we're welcoming you to unmute yourself, and looking forward to your poetry.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to read. This is such a cool reading and such a cool space. This poem is called Hallel, and it is sort of after a group of psalms that are sung on holidays. Jewish holidays, that is. Hallel. From the narrows I call out to you, the sacred you, the scarred you, the scared you, the discarded you, the you that stacked the nothing on top of nothing, on top of nothing, to put a heartbeat in the newborn universe. From the expanse, you answer me. The new me, the neon me, the narrow me, the nobody who shouts into the nothing and waits for echo. Because eternally you compassion. You don't just compassion, do you? You chesed, you do the loving and the kindness and the compassioning and the everlasting and empowering and all of that good shit without thinking about it, don't you? Oh, big nothing, help us. Oh, too much to name, give us life. Praised are the works of the big nothing. The heartbeats we don't hear, the breath in and out, the spring rain and the hail coming down before the sunrise. This is the day the void made. We should fucking rejoice about it. Thanks for answering me, I guess. I don't know what you are or how to thank you or where you end and begin again. You bigger than me, refracting light, raising the poor up from the dust, and still somehow being a big nothing. You have answered me, and I guess that is enough. The river Jordan flows backwards, the hills skip like rams, and here I am still listening for the echo that fades as I open my mouth. Thank you.
Woo! Nice. Thank you, Tyler. You have one more for us?
Yeah, sure. I have one more. So this poem is called Swimmer, and I'm kind of working on a sequel to this book, which is called Never Coming Home. It came out in 2015 on Topside Press, and it is a sort of semi-autobiographical book about a young disabled woman who is estranged from her family, and I don't know where I would have gotten that idea for a book. But this is sort of a sequel poem to one of the poems in that book that I just held up. This is called Swimmer. I'm nowhere near the shoreline, but I'm waiting for the Chesapeake Bay to swallow me up and spit me out into the Atlantic. To forget how to swim is to realize you never knew. To crave water you can't tread is to linger with the taste of salt in your mouth forever.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much, Tyler. I hope you'll join us again. Love that. Okay, so our next open mic poet has said he prefers to just watch. So we're sort of done with the open mic, but I have someone in the Zoom room who asked if I would read something, and since we've been talking so much about Allen Ginsberg, I thought I would just read this one poem about my experience as Allen Ginsberg's student. It's called Allen. I won't read the title. It's about Allen Ginsberg. What memories I have of you tonight, Professor Ginsberg. We straggle-haired students searching hand in hand, hoping for your full moon. With hearty puppy hunger, we shopped for images along Broadway, picked up a penumbra on Lafayette, bargained for a brainstorm on Canal. We paddled to the blinking neon CUNY sign, a Pell Grant for your thoughts. What similes and metaphors! Students slumped over keyboards at daybreak, professors in the wine cellar, Corso under the conference table, Orlovsky in the toilet, and you, what were you doing in the supply closet? I saw you, Professor Ginsberg, gypsy-footed word dancer, poking the plump EO and eyeing my young Persian boy. We asked the important questions. Who killed Kammerer? What crippled Kerouac? Where is your halo? We wandered in and out of your brilliant store of used metaphors, smashing the similes against the wall and calling them rude names. We strode down the broad college corridors together in our fancy haiku hats, singing communist slogans and drinking hot cocoa, not stopping to pick up the transcript. Where were you taking us, Allen Ginsberg? Saving us from tragic flawed traffic as we alliterate ourselves to death? I came to you with 2 left feet, but you taught me to slow dance with myself. See, I am tripping again. We read Burroughs' dreamscape desert ramblings and thought we saw Kerouac in your eyes. You told us each syllable was a part of the constellation, and we believed you. Will we walk all night through your starry skies? Will we stroll dreaming of Paris Review publications? Or will we wander down the infinite hallway, past tech majors prodding symbolic keys, wishing for a pension plan, past social workers marching on hallowed ground, past the economics students sharpening institution pencils? Or shall we give them a present of smoking metaphor on wheels and watch the eyes go blank with beauty? Old courage teacher, what America have we created with our imperfect, howling babble? Dear Allen, you have braved the hideous and stumbled on the razor edge of poetic pain for our edification and amusement. If we count backwards from 10, will you appear again and watch our words boil over, or will you stir them in the big black pot we call wisdom and pray for love? So thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening for poetry. Thanks so much to Genevieve Pfeiffer and Bob Timm for agreeing to be our features. We hope you guys will come back again. That was, the poems were so amazing. So many images, so many little films, embedded. Thank you, Tyler Weil, for the poetry. Really appreciate that. And we hope that you all of you come back again and join us. If you've got a poem, please join us on the open mic with your poetry. Also, thanks to Chris, our tech person, keeping us, moving along. And Nuyorican is going to be back in person, maybe by the end of the summer, or maybe not until October. We have to see how COVID pans out, but we'll be back. Nick will be joining us again. Hopefully, usually we take off for the summer because no one's flying anywhere. We may be back next month on a Wednesday, but watch the Nuyorican calendar, and you'll see when our event is back. We're always on a Wednesday night, 7 p.m. So thanks everyone for joining us, and hope to see you again soon.